Recording in progress.
May we have our seats, please? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start, just like we did last month when we had our Next Generation series, we lost a few persons that are very dear to us at the chamber, principal of whom was Mr. Herbert Wigwe, the MD of Access Holdings PLC, one of our premium members, his dear wife, his first son, Mr. Bimbola Ogumbanjo, a friend of the house. And just yesterday, one of our panelists, Mrs. Kemi Awudei, lost her father just 2 hours after we had a test run, Papa Dele Ogutuga. So we'll just rise for a minute under the authority of Mr. President, Chairman of Council, to say a prayer, a silent prayer for 1 minute for the departed. May we rise. May their kind souls rest in peace, and may their legacies be preserved. Amen. May we have our seats. It's IWD, the Day for Women. Good morning again, everyone. My name is Tajuddin Ahmed. I'm the chairman of the Programs Committee of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, NBCC. I'm pleased to welcome you all, physical and virtual attendees, to the 2024 International Women's Day themed Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. I'm particularly delighted to see our council and ESCO members radiantly out here, our distinguished speaker, Mrs. Tino Adiawe, the moderator, our own Mrs. Rolake Akinkugbe Filani, the able panelists, and our esteemed guests. Please rise as you observe, as is our tradition, the Nigerian and British national anthems. Communications team, take a cue from me. Could we play our national anthems?
Father
Thank you, media team. May we have our seats, please. Before we begin, please allow me to state some housekeeping guidelines for this event. For our physical attendees, questions will be answered during the Q&A session. Please raise your hands and the microphone will be brought to you. For those joining us through virtual mode, if the volume is too low, kindly check the volume on your gadget, your system, etc. This event is being recorded and will be available live on our YouTube channel, Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, NBCC. For questions, comments, and discussions, use the chat icon. For posts on social media, kindly use the hashtag NBCC-IWD 2024. NBCC-IWD, one word, in caps, 2024 in numerals. Thank you for listening. Please join me as I welcome our President and Chairman of Council, Mr. Ray Artile, FRPA, to give his welcome address. May we honor our President as he comes to the podium to give his opening remarks. Mr. President.
Thank you. Why does it feel like a dull morning? Perhaps we are mourning. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to have you here today. I hope that soon the room will fill up and we can have a very lively session today. The protocols. In absentia, we have the Deputy President, the past presidents, our distinguished guest speaker still in transit, panelists, some are here, our able moderator, members of this foremost bilateral chamber in Nigeria, invited guests, titled and untitled, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly observed. I know it's going to be a good morning, so let's go. Women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are in hot water. The words of Eleanor Roosevelt, the former U.S. First Lady. I have known and grown around tea bags who inspired me to believe in the irrepressible strength of a woman. Women who defied the odds and accomplished greatly, even when they operated in hot waters and were given no chance to succeed. Women who boxed into corners were expected to beg for mercy or for handouts, but chose instead to fight and stun their oppressors with a string of noteworthy accomplishments that broke all chains from their hands and necks, to the eternal embarrassment of such mean individuals. Women, you do have immeasurable strength that the world and its unholy welcome has forced upon you, and you have developed this. It has helped you transform what ought to be a debilitating weakness has turned out to be strength, inestimable strength. I'm a believer in women because I'm enamored of the strength and inner beauty of the women I have come to know. As we celebrate this year's International Women's Day, fighting a noble fight for inclusion, please heed the words of Nora Ephron, the American award-winning author and producer. She said, and I quote, "Above all, be the heroine of your life, not the victim." Yes. The journey to this day has indeed been a long and arduous task. From 1909, when a National Women's Day was declared in New York City, which later got renamed 2 years later to International Women's Day in 1911, as the crusade went global, it has always been about the progressive inclusion of women in political and economic matters. The 19th Amendment of the US Constitution ratified women's rights to vote, but perhaps it may surprise you to know that it took 42 years from 1878 to 1920, 42 whole years, what the struggle took. You take a bill to Congress, and that bill takes 42 years to become law. That indeed was the obstacle that women, your forebears, faced. Every generation of women must stand up to the challenges of their time and show courage that no form of abuse or intimidation can silence. Our own Lavi Ajayi, she's American but Nigerian as well, she captured it succinctly. She said, "In a world that wants women to whisper, I choose to yell." That's her words, not mine. Please yell, sisters, yell. And then again, all the references I'm making come from women. So you can see those who were before you, what they have done, the seeds they have sown, and draw inspiration from that. Carly Simon did say that a really strong woman is ennobled by her scars, not scared, but ennobled, strengthened, galvanized, rejuvenated. Give me more words. Scars of wars fought and survived in a world where she is denied full access to her humanity. Your scar is a badge of honor that proclaims loudly on the mountaintop, "I cannot be silenced." Melinda Gates added her voice. A woman with a voice is by definition a strong woman. But the search to find that voice can be remarkably difficult. Women must take the lead in helping women find their voices. Your voice, like an echo, soon becomes their voice, and your courage emboldens them to dare. You must continue beyond a day like this to advocate for women without apologies and be their voices in the boardroom and even in the bedroom. Be their voices in places of leadership and influence. Be their voices in courtrooms and assembly rooms. Mentor them, invest in their businesses, and sow in them the seed of gallantry they need to fight on, even when you are gone. For this race is not for the swift. After over a century, inclusion is still on the front burner, and we are talking about it this morning. The UN Sustainability Development Goal, one of them, is that by the year 2030, it is expected that we will achieve gender equity and empowerment of all women. We are barely 6 years away from that magic year. I ask you, how confident are you that all women in Nigeria shall be fully included and empowered by 2030? the silence speaks. It therefore seems to me that we need to reload our guns. For the men, the liberated minds amongst you, please make no mistake. Our support for women is not a gift worth appreciating. It is an acknowledgement of injustice and a resolve to do right. The fact that we are still marking International Women's Day after over a century simply tells us there is still lots of work to be done. The theme, Inspire Inclusion, is a call to action for you, for me, for all of us to lead the way and become champions for the greater involvement of women in greater numbers. Granted, we have made some progress, but it is far from adequate. There is still a significant exclusion of women, especially in educationally backward and religious hardline countries where men hold sway. Anti-progressive stereotypes marked in faith and culture have held the even development of all people while keeping a tight rein on women. They think they are putting the women down, but they are setting the world backwards. It is backwardness for a society of free men to deny women the right to vote, even when they constitute half the population. And even more in some instances, how can men drive and yet deny women the right to do the same? Go to clubs, entertain themselves, enjoy themselves, make merry. But the women can't do the same. Why do we gloat over reserving 20% ministerial slots for women? What happened to 50-50? Now, if I say that, it sounds like I'm out of my mind. 50-50 in which country? Maybe Norway, not Nigeria. Hey, Nigeria, Norway. Even the women amongst you, you need to liberate your minds, because perhaps the manacles that chain you came from your store. So you need to start thinking differently. It is your entitlement, not a token gift. Key decision-making and board positions are occupied by men, even when merit dictates it should be given to a better qualified and better performing woman. The story is the same everywhere. It is indeed time to reload our guns and fight for greater inclusion based on justice and mutual respect. Yes, some of you may not know that I've been married before. Yes, I'll share with you. A certain lady came to my office and narrated a very ugly experience. She lost her mother, and then shortly after, the father followed suit. And the property owner sold the property. So the developer came and served a very short notice to pull down the house. And so they needed to, she and her younger sister, only sibling, they needed to look for accommodation like yesterday. And so she heard that I was crusading for people. Yes. And she came and told me the story. And I said, so what do you want? She said, she's found a house, but they don't want a spinster. So you must be married to live in the house. And she came to propose that I marry her. And I accepted the proposal and got married. Got to the landlord and deceived him. He gave a second appointment to see if we will come back again. And we did come, couples, holding hands, smiling at nothingness. But we knew what we wanted to achieve. And then she got the house, moved in with her younger sister. By the way, she was well employed, working in a bank. Yet she couldn't get a house unless a man, an unknown entity, who might just be a worthless figure in her life, came along to open doors for her to enter. I did open the door. That's how I got married. And she moved in. And that's where the story ended. Lately, I discovered that my wife is now a big shot in a bank. Very, very big on the board. I did not sign any divorce papers, so I might just go back and see if we can reconnect. Yes, that's it. That's how I got married then. All right? So, carrying on, access to opportunities must be non-discriminatory. The inalienable rights of women must not be locked away in the constitution of nations gathering dust. Men must not look away while women are being denied because of the archaic mentality of power entitlement, which makes many men keep silent as a way of maintaining control over women. Families equally have a big role to play here. What do we teach our boys at home? We must stop entrenching discriminatory stereotypes in our homes. Our boys must be taught to respect and not just to love women. They must know that their sisters, and indeed all women, have the same rights as they do. If you sow the wrong culture at home, you shall surely reap exclusion and subjugation in the future. We must invest more in the education of women, and we must provide access for them to participate in mainstream economic activities to earn decent wages or income. We must protect the dignity of women by making laws that provide for their peculiar circumstances and unique roles in society, with due recognition and reward for their profound contributions. At the NBCC, the foremost bilateral chamber in Nigeria, we have embarked on this journey through our Women and Youth Entrepreneurship Development Center, an NGO that would help train our women and young girls to become business owners in the near future. We are hopeful that many women whose lives may have been thrown into turmoil by bereavement or failed marriages would have the chance to begin anew in ways that will restore their dignity and pride. We need support in cash or in kind to drive this project to a successful conclusion. Thank you for being a part of our celebration. Please be an advocate for marginalized women today and right the wrong that has held our world back. This, all you have heard, is just a teaser. Our guest speaker and panelist will help us understand what needs to be done. I can't wait to hear them share their thoughts. Thank you once again and good morning.
Thank you, Mr. President. May we appreciate Mr. President once more for that profound setting of the tone for today's engagement. You pardon us. Our president is a wordsmith, So when he speaks, you listen with rapt attention as to what he's speaking. And I think he's giving us a solid fillip to start this conversation this morning. Now, before we go ahead, I want to take a cue from Mr. President regarding some of the quotes, he made in his speech. And I have 5 here. Then one is my favorite out of the 5. American civil rights activist W.B. Du Bois says, "There's no force more powerful than a woman determined to rise." Brigham Young also said, "You educate a man, you educate a man. You educate a woman, you educate a generation." May we clap for our women again. Michelle Obama, the former First Lady of the United States, said, "There's no limit to what we as women can accomplish." Angela Jolie, I'm sure all of us know her, she said, "There's no greater pillar of stability than a strong, free, and educated woman." Now, this is my favorite. D.M. Timney is a well-known essayist and quotes merchant. He said, "The king may rule the kingdom, but it's the queen who moves the board." Let me paraphrase it again. The man may be the traditional ruler ruling the kingdom, but it's actually the woman, the queen, who moves the board. And we all know that whoever moves the board actually takes the decisions in charge. So that's what D.M. Timney said. In addition to that, in Nigeria today, we've had 2 female-focused organizations that are relentless in trying to put the women at the forefront. One is WIMBIS, Women in Management, Business, and Public Service, founded by 13 wonderful persons, 12 women and 1 man. Incidentally, one of the founders is here, our own Mrs. Adeola, as is Vice Chair of the Energy Group. May you stand for recognition. There's one singular man among them, Mr. Chichi Okonjo. I need to hear the story how out of 13 persons, 1 man was a founder of WIMBIS. The other one is Whisker, Women in Successful Careers, founded by a woman I so respect, one of the leading practitioners of HR and the legal profession in this country, Mrs. Amina Oyabola. There's a popular saying, so we are Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, so I'll do the British part, then I'll do the Nigerian leg, hopefully. There's something called, it's an axiom that says women are the salt of the earth. The Hausa man would say, "Mache, sune gishirin dunia." The Igbo would say, I hope I'll get this Igbo right, I battle with it. Umuwai, bono nekwa. I hope I got that. Then Yoruba would say, Obirin ni iyo aye. Truly, women are the salt of the earth. May we give our women another round of applause again. Okay. Our guest speaker, like I said, is still on our way. So we're going to tweak this program a bit. Media, could you just take a cue from me and play the sponsors video for Lotus Bank? Bank, one of our former sponsors. So we'll tweak the program a bit. We'll go to the panel discussion and Q&A. Then when the guest speaker arrives, we'll take our part. I would like to introduce members of the panel, starting with Mrs. Adesua Okumba Rhodes. Very short profile. She's managing partner, Aruwa Capital Management. Incidentally, they are sponsors as well. Mrs. Okumba Rhodes is one of the few growth equity and gender lens funds in Africa. Our company, Aruwa Capital, that is, closing gender gaps across society. She has more than 15 years of investment banking and private equity experience in developed and emerging markets from global institutions. Adesua spent 5 years as managing partner of Syntaxis Capital Africa, a provider of growth capital to SMEs in Nigeria and across sub-Saharan Africa. At Syntaxis Africa, she led transactions totaling more than $200 million across sub-Saharan Africa. Prior to co-founding Syntaxis Africa in 2014, Adesua was in the leveraged finance and M&A teams at JP Morgan in London, where she was involved in $16 billion worth of transactions across emerging markets, including Nigeria. She was named as an agent of impact in 2019 by Impact Alpha and recognized as one of the top 35 women moving Africa forward in 2020. In 2021, Adesua was named as one of the top 100 global leaders combining profit and purpose by the organization called Meaningful Business. In 2022, she was named as one of the top 100 African leaders under the age of 40 by Institute Choiseul, set to play a major role in the economic development of the African continent. And she also recognized as one of the top 50 inspiring women in Nigeria by Business Day newspapers. In 2023, Adesua won the 2X Global Award for the Woman Fund Manager of the Year. She also received national recognition from the Executive Governor of Lagos State as one of the 150 Eco-Aspire women for her contribution towards achieving gender equity and nation building. Adesua was named as one of the 50 impactful women driving business by Empower Africa. She was also named as one of the 8 remarkable Nigerian women who are breaking barriers both locally and internationally by Dexter Pro. With Aruba Capital's $20 million fund, Adesua is the only female GP in Nigeria to raise over $10 million in a first fund. May I invite Mrs. Adesua Okumba Rhodes to take a seat before we begin the panel. May we give her a resounding round of applause. She's wearing 2 caps today. She's a panelist and she's the CEO of one of the sponsoring companies. I won't belabor us with the intro of the moderator. She's one of us. We're tired of of listening to your profile, our own Rolake. I'd like to introduce in absentia Mrs. Kemi Awodeyin, who unfortunately couldn't join us today because, like I said in the beginning, she lost her dear father just yesterday. Kemi is the Managing Director of Investment Banking and Chapel Hill Denham Advisory Limited. Kemi has over 24 years of experience in investment banking. She joined Chapel Hill Denham through the business combination between Chapel Hill Advisory Partners and Denham Management Limited, and has been involved in executing transactions including IPOs, privatization, equity raising, M&As. Prior to the business combination, Kemi spent 8 years also managing the legal function at Denham, ensuring that the company's businesses and activities were statutorily and regulatorily compliant. Prior to joining Chapel Hill Denham, Kemi worked as an associate in the prestigious law firm of Udo Udoma and Bello Osage, where she gained wide-ranging experience in oil and gas, capital markets, company and commercial law. Kemi is a graduate of law from the University of Warwick and Nottingham University, where she had LLM in international law and was called to the Nigerian bar in December 1992, 32 years ago. Kemi is an alumnus of the prestigious Lagos Business School, SMP 25. She is also a member of the Governance Board of the Financial Center for Sustainability, Lagos FC4S, where she is a thematic lead on issuances and investments. She currently chairs the MBA SBL Mergers, Acquisitions, and Corporate Reorganizations Committee. In November 2023, Kemi was elected as the president of the Association of Issuing Houses of Nigeria, and she's also a board member of the Atlantic Hall Education Trust. In absentia, may we appreciate Mrs. Kemi Awodeyin. Finally, so in my early years, I attended a Catholic secondary school for boys, a boarding school. So I have liberty to paraphrase certain things. Matthew 5, verse 9 said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called," would you want to complete it? Sons of God. So let me have the liberty, as someone who attended a male-only Catholic school, to say, "Blessed is the man seated among women, for he shall be called," fill in the gap. So I have the honor to introduce Mr. Adeniyi Adekoya, the only man on that panel. Mr. Adekoya is the Deputy Managing Director of Sinopet and Western Limited, formerly AKE Prime Limited, a subsidiary of Prime Atlantic Group. Adeniyi Adekoya is an astute businessman who has over the years garnered extensive knowledge and experience in energy, maritime, and banking sectors, particularly investment banking, both locally and internationally. Ni joined the board of directors of Access Bank PLC, one of the foremost banks in Africa, as an independent non-executive director in March 2017. He currently chairs the board Digital and Information Technology Committee. He's also the vice chairman of the board governance, nomination, and remuneration committee. Mr. Adekoya was a general manager of Peacegate Holdings Limited, where he was responsible for setting up and developing the company's marine operations. He also acted as a consultant to Main Nigeria, where he developed the framework for a private placement to raise $500 million startup capital for the company, and he led its participation in bid round for the award of oil blocks in the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. An avid sportsman, Mr. Adekoya, what football club do you follow? Oh, Arsenal. Oh, my goodness. We are friends from today. Our bond has increased by that. I deliberately asked that question. I was going somewhere. And he passed the test. Arsenal fan. An avid Arsenal fan, so I would replace that with Arsenal fan rather than sportsman. Mr. Adekoya is a keen supporter of sporting activities in Nigeria and was a civilian instructor on the Canadian Air Force Cadet Group. I have the singular honor to invite the blessed man who is going to be seated among women, Mr. Adeniyi Adekoya. A round of applause for him. Okay. I'm just taking the cue that in the absence of Mrs. Chinua Adeawe and Mrs. Awodei, may I invite the Vice Chairperson of our energy group, a co-founder of Wimbase, my own auntie, Adiola Aziz, to join the panel. So, the next 30 seconds, I'll take my seat and shut up my mouth and allow Rolake to come and earn our pay, even if it's pro bono. May I welcome the moderator?
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As always, it's an honor and privilege to do this for the NBCC. I think back over to the start of my journey with the NBCC, and I don't know how I was co-opted to become almost a permanent fixture, moderating the panels. But I guess, you know, they say that the reward for good work is more work. So I'm grateful. I'm really glad, as always, to be talking about issues related to women and women's empowerment. As we're all aware, it's that week of the year where, or I should say month of the year, where our society, industry, our virtual platforms, our conference halls are awash with female-focused events. But we always celebrate women throughout the year, women in industry, women across government, women in public service. And the question I always have on my mind time and time again is, are we really moving the needle? So I was quite then delighted to see that this year's theme, Inspire Inclusion, had a sub-theme that said invest in women. Because I say it's important to go beyond just walking the walk and talking the talk, but it's important to actually put our financial and social capital behind women and women's empowerment. And I think what we're going to seek to do here today is to get behind the facts and figures, look at some of the recent milestones, the positive milestones over the last few years, because women have made some important contributions and feats, and I think this should be celebrated. Before we get into the discussion, I just wanted to set a bit of context. These figures are from UN Women. At the current rate of investments, more than 340 million women and girls will still live in extreme poverty by 2030. That is, if we continue to invest in women and girls at the current rate of investments. And that investment is not just financial, it's resources, it's time. The other part of it is that the world needs an additional $360 billion per year, especially in developing countries, to address gender equality goals under the SDGs. And whilst it's true that globally many women are increasing in their share of assets and finance, the reality is, as the number of poor and economically disempowered people around the world grows, unfortunately more and more women are still falling off the economic ladder. So, our panelists here are going to help us make sense of some of this, talk about what they are personally doing and what their organizations are doing to promote and champion this cause and hopefully reverse this tide. So the first person I'd like to come to is Adeso Okuborods. I've been very privileged to work with Arua Capital Management as an advisory board member, so I know a lot of the great work that they put into doing what they're doing. So I guess my question to you, Adeso, Arua invests in women-led or gender-focused enterprises. And the statistics you've recently told me is that the funding funnel is not reaching as much women as it needs to. So the question for you is, why do you think women-owned enterprises are still struggling to raise capital? And what can we do to close the funding gap?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rolake. So this is a topic very, very close to my heart. And we've seen through the years that this funding gap will continue to persist if we don't take some very, very bold action. But if we go to the root of the matter, why does this funding gap exist? From the research that we've done and the research that a lot of global organizations have done, there are a few factors that contribute to the funding gap. One of them is unconscious bias that just exists in the society. Women tend to be deemed by financial providers, people that are investing, as more risky propositions. The line of questioning that women get is very, very different to the line of questioning that men get. So men are asked promotional questions, women are asked preventative questions. So, the same two people that are coming into a business pitch, one is a man, one is a woman. The woman will be asked, how do you intend not to lose customers in the next 5 years? The man will be asked, how do you intend to grow your business in the next 5 years? So this line of questioning, the research has shown that it tends to limit the capital that women are raising from financial providers. So there's very, very deep-seated unconscious bias in society with regards to how capital providers, who are mostly men, deem the performance of women when they're providing capital to them. So this unconscious bias needs to be broken. And that's something that we are very passionate about at Arua Capital. We think that in order to do this, you need to have more women in those rooms. You need to have more women in investment decision-making roles. You need to have more women allocating capital. Because when you have more women in those rooms, when you have more women allocating capital, they may, actually I know they will, I won't say they will change their line of questioning. They will be able to relate to the woman as, just another business proposition, one that can be reviewed on the same level playing field. So I think that's something that we really need to focus on. And Rolake said it very beautifully. Let us put our capital behind women. We don't want to be empowered anymore. We want to be invested into. So we need to put our capital behind women, because when we have more women businesses flourishing, when we have more women that have been able to raise capital, have been able to scale their businesses, we have more torch bearers, we have more mentors, we have more role models, we have more people that we can point to, we have more women that are employing more women.
G mass was working. What happened? They scaled up. The youth in that community could, education, online, security was sorted out. Access to market was dealt with. Okay? So many other things in basically trying to transform. So it's not just to raise and develop, is basically to transform society. So my politics was politics of transformation, politics of digitization, and ensuring that I was appealing to the women. Difficult to raise and approach women in that environment because they're tied to the aprons of their husbands. You cannot imagine. Yeah. You speak to them, and so what was the other side of the question? Sorry, I'm getting carried away.
But no, I honestly, I think you've said a lot. I can draw out so much in what you said, and maybe your submissions just now were actually more to our women folk, because what I see there, you had a strategy, you leveraged on your network, which is really important, but you also built your professional capacity and competence. And I think this is something that we shouldn't often miss, because the reality is women don't want handouts, right? We don't necessarily just want to rely on quotas to get access or have doors open. We want to showcase the fact that we know our onions and we bring value to the table. And I think what you've just shown is that. And the final thing I would say, you also understood what mattered, right? And so you aligned your own goals to the needs of society. And so people were willing to also back you and put your money behind that. So I think you had a strong and compelling proposition.
Yes. One more thing that I'd like to bring to the House, that each corporate organization, if you can help support, advocate, speak on, shout out, is the issue about the 5 bills on women that were thrown out. If we do not resolve that 5 bill to be back on the table of this 10th Assembly, there's no way any investment in women can begin, because everything starts from politics, and if you do not get that going, there's no way we can accelerate the growth.
Yeah, fantastic contributions. A round of applause for Mrs. Aziz. And of course, we often say politics drives business. So this brings me to another question I have, which is how we can even better articulate the financial and business and maybe even national development rationale for actually closing the gap from a gender perspective, both in terms of financial empowerment and other metrics. What are some of the tangible results or evidence that we're seeing on this issue?
Sure, thank you, Rolake, and thank you, Mr. Aziz, for that. So at Arua, we are very focused on showcasing the business case for investing in women, but also showcasing the social impact multiplier that also comes from investing in women. So I think someone said it earlier, you empower a woman, you empower a community, you empower a generation. So, we've seen some research that shows that when you invest in women, and specifically female entrepreneurs, they're generating 2.5 times on the dollar compared to men. We've also seen a lot of research that shows that women pay back their loans. We've also seen a lot of research that shows that when you have gender diverse boards, gender diverse management teams, there's improved profitability within companies. So we've been investing now for almost 5 years in female-led and female-focused businesses. And we've actually seen some of these research that we've seen globally manifest here in Nigeria within our companies. So our fund right now, we have 10 portfolio companies that are all female-led or female-focused. 70% of them are actually female-led. And we've seen increased profitability in our companies, increased revenue growth. We'd make it a point not just to have gender diversity at the founder level, but also within management, within boards, within our supply chain, within our distribution value chain. So I think when you're very intentional about driving gender diversity across your company, you will see the you would reap the benefits of that gender diversity. So that's the business case that we've seen. From a socioeconomic development perspective, we've actually seen that with our gender lens strategy, there is enhanced job creation. There is also enhanced access to basic goods and services. So across our portfolio today, even though we've only backed 10 companies, we're supporting over 360,000 direct and indirect jobs. And about 60% of those indirect and direct jobs are occupied by women. In addition, we've also seen that women driving companies have better policies for their employees. We've seen that our companies are paying 31 times the average minimum wage compared to other companies. So we try and really emphasize not only the financial returns and the business case that is being driven in terms of improved profitability, improved performance, but also how are we improving lives in underserved communities. They're getting access to healthcare. We've seen that about 60 to 70% of our portfolio companies prior to us coming in are now getting access to primary healthcare. They're, better wages, increased job creation across our portfolio. I believe it was 710 jobs that were created last year. So we're very intentional about not only, showcasing strong financial returns, but also showing how through investing in women, through taking, gender diversity across your company seriously, not only at the founder level, but across the entire value chain of the business, you're able to actually improve thousands of lives as well. I believe the research shows that when you make a woman financially independent, she's typically investing 90% of her income into healthcare and education for her children. Men invest about 30%. There is a real tangible socioeconomic development impact when women are empowered. I will always encourage anyone listening, please take gender diversity, gender equality seriously, because that's what actually can lift Nigeria out of poverty. It can actually take us from where we are to, a much more balanced, fairer society if we take our women seriously.
Thank you very much, Adeswa. That was some very good submissions and data. The part about the loan servicing, I've always found interesting because about a year ago, I participated in an AFAWA forum. This is the Affirmative Action for Women, led by AFDB, around financing and supporting women-owned businesses. And across all the countries and all the banks they work with, women had the highest number of performing loans. However, from a proportion perspective, in terms of loans actually extended, women were the lowest recipients of those loans. But when they got those loans, they actually performed at a better rate than men. So I think that's also it'd be interesting for somebody to study why psychologically that is. So Mr. Adekoya, one of the issues I wanted you to help us unpack is this concept of sponsorship and mentorship in the corporate space. Mentoring is something that we're very, very familiar with in this society. And I think we've kind of established that women finding female mentors is important. But I've also been particularly lucky in my career because I've also had male mentors and male sponsors. And I wonder, and when I say sponsors, we're talking not financial sponsors per se, but people say that just so there's clarity on that, before people think I'm talking about a godfather or... But a sponsor, one of the distinctions, a mentor is somebody who guides you. A sponsor is somebody who actually opens the door for you and advocates for you and stakes their reputation on seeing you progress. I wondered how, given some of the cultural stereotypes and nuances we have in this society, and given that men are still largely in control from a leadership perspective, how can we create that culture of mentorship and sponsorship in our corporate spaces? And what would that look like, for instance, in the Prime Atlantic? Do you have a mentoring program for women in the organization? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Rolake. At Prime Atlantic, we don't have a specific mentoring program for women. We have a mentoring program. Unofficially, we do say to the C-suites women that they should take some of the younger members of staff under their wings. So what we generally do is when we have the mentorship program, it'd probably be a ratio of one C-suite executive to 3 people. Ensure that there's 2 female, 1 male, Sometimes if it's a male C-suite, 2 male, 1 female. The idea is to kind of allow them watch and learn through what you do. Should we have one specific to women? Maybe in the near future. Not right now, because to break this cultural issue within a workplace, there are even things within a policy that could constrain you as an executive. So it still has to be worked around, and I think those are things that would happen when you put your foot out there and say, my business will show its gender diversity and we will have gender equity across the board. Then you can then be held accountable. Then when we sit down to craft policies, we will craft policies with all these cultural issues in mind, with the geographical issues, with the religious issues, especially within the context of Africa. When I was speaking earlier about my mother, there were times that I would hear statements like, oh, everything that you see this man has, it's not his own, it's his wife. Because he allowed her to grow. But it wasn't the case. He had to deal with issues around she slept away there. Now, I asked myself repeatedly, how did this man come home and be happy to have to deal with this and still love this woman and still protect her, still support her? Unfortunately, he's not around now, so I can't get the answer to the question, but I can only imagine what it would do to one's psyche. So we really have to keep that in mind. But I truly believe that, well, it won't be in 6 years, but probably over the next decade, we will start to see some significant improvements. I can agree with what Adesoa said. When I wear my other hat, yes, the lowest non-performing loans are with the female business. Why you're not getting as much incapacity has a lot to do with them not wanting to come out, or maybe not understanding the vagaries of requesting a loan, looking at the requirements and saying this is too much, because there are some cases where you actually find women may have to go to their husbands or to someone else and say, oh, can you countersign here as a guarantor? And then you get the cultural issues. With regards to sponsorship, I don't know of any woman who has succeeded in this world who has not had a sponsor, male or female. My mother did, Mrs. Aziz. I happen to know who her father is. So she was born with a sponsor, but she herself has done so much in her profession that, I know people who sponsored her even without her asking. I'm sure it's the same for Adesoa and yourself. There are people who would, within Prime Atlantic, we are looking at scenarios for where we can support businesses. I'm not necessarily from a completely altruistic point of view. We have a profit goal to make, so we would look at the business and see how profitable it is, but we would have a slant towards female-run businesses, and there's biases that they're generally better run. They don't suffer the same issues where with the male businesses, where you find that our desires for material, buying things that are really not, they're temporal in nature, they don't deal with those issues. So yes, there are people who would sponsor regardless of the issues about culture, and it's something that Prime Atlantic is very, very happy to look at.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adekoya, and also for sharing very openly and personally your family experience. We truly appreciate that. So we have about, I think, just under 10 minutes left for the panel discussion. Mrs. Aziz, there are two final questions I wanted to ask you. The first is that some schools of thought believe that one of the ways to close the gap is to really insist that certain things happen. And if we look back over the last decade or so in key industries, we know what the former CBN governor, Malam Lamido Sanusi, did with banking, especially around gender representation in financial services, which many, many corporates, got on board with, and we're seeing some of those results today. So the first question for you is really your thoughts around gender quotas. And I'd like Adesua to also chip in on the quota issue. And then for you also, Mrs. Aziz, there seems to be a huge disconnect in my mind between what is going on in the public sector at policy level and some of the gains the private sector is making, right? What more can we do to lobby, to advocate? There's so many powerful women in the Nigerian private sector, but the voices are not getting heard in the legislative and policy-making space. Bills are being thrown out. So who is speaking for women in those corridors? It would be great to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Very valid question, and it's definitely something that should be out there, thrown on the table, the question you asked. Now, there are women and there are women. The reason I say so is that I'm going to be very candid. From what I have seen is, and I hope today will be given a chance because this is really her space as well. Now, the number and the quantum of women who dare to speak truth to power are few. I say so because I've experienced it. Now, I see some of the women who have been at the top. When they get to the top, they feel mission accomplished, right? So for them to continue that advocacy, that lobbying, that seizing the moment, when you see an influential man, politician, and grab him and ask, they either don't remember or they're not intentional about it. I will tell you some of the things that I do and continue to do. I have a reputation for being a go-getter. I have a reputation for being tenacious. I have a reputation for being, she doesn't give up. Now, the reason I say so is before I need or want to improve or say something, I was going to say something about this event. I will go to Mr. Harriet Tale when I got to know him. Why are we not, in a very subtle manner, the moment I see his countenance, then I jump to the next question. So I'm using that as an analogy, right? In the sense that we need that force, we need that number to ensure that it's not just only an Adiola Aziz or the founders of Wimbies or the current board members of Wimbies who should be doing the talking. Because we talk, and then we get tired. We have to keep on at it. Because the moment you drop, then something happens. Unfortunately, again, where you have the current administration trying to raise the number of women in governance, right? In trying to improve the numbers, we see the outcome that has happened in recent past. Very discouraging. But then again, we should not be looking at their actions for the lens of other women. So, because that is not who we are. So, my answer to that is that as many women who are here in this room, and you are either C-suite or you're rising up in your organization, right? Please, I beg you, have that courage to just speak, and don't just flag the women flag. Talk like a man, but win. I mean, it's like act like a man or win like a man. What's that? You know what I'm trying to say, right? So get your elevator speech, your intelligence speech, everything to back up what you're saying about women. For me, generally, I was saying, okay, to talk to NBCC and the event we're having today, and I love my TJ, right? And I'm saying, it's a women's event. Why do we have a man who is doing the MC? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm like, again, we need to project some of our women, even if they're not confident, we let them do it afraid. I'm using this again to talk about policy. What we tend to do, either is in an organization like this, we need to be conscious, intentional about these things that we do. They may be little, but it's what takes us as becomes part of our DNA when we are in government to implement and intentionally seek out women who can do this. We need a pipeline of women from entry level to middle level to senior management that can help project and continuously talk the talk. Fantastic. While walking it right.
Thank you very much. And I think you highlighted one issue there that we often suffer from. Women bear a burden of representation. So if one woman fails or succeed, all women have failed or succeeded. And it appears sometimes that men don't have such a huge burden, seen as more individuals than anything. So Adesua, just final quick word on the issue of quotas. Are you supportive of quotas? Do we need to use them more to achieve our goals, or do we need to continue the focus more on the soft advocacy?
Yes, I'm a big believer of quotas, but I think we shouldn't get it confused with equality. That's just the beginning. So the quota gets the woman into the room. The quota helps us achieve some level of gender diversity. But that's just the beginning. You know, the woman entering the board, that's just the beginning. It's then how do you then achieve equality to ensure that that woman's voice is heard, to make sure that she's able to influence that room that she's in. So quotas are great, and I think they've worked very well in the banking system, where we've had a lot of female bank MDs, female chairwomen, etc. But that's just the beginning. We shouldn't see it as, oh, that's done. Okay, I've achieved. I've ticked the box for my gender action plan for the year. It's what policies are you then putting in place to ensure that there's actually real gender equality in your organization, which comes from policies, which comes from training, like we've discussed. I think we fall into the trap of setting quotas and thinking that our work is done, and we need to go beyond that. It's a great start, but there's a lot more that can be added to that to achieve real gender equality.
Okay, fantastic. Please thank the panelists. We're still going to come back after our keynote speaker for Q&A, so please make sure to note all the questions that are burning that you'd like to ask. So we'll take a break for now and hand over to Mr. Ahmed. Thank you.
May we give another round of applause to our speaker, to our panelists and the moderator. May you have your seats first. You are going to return on my orders. Okay, like I did mention when we started, our guest speaker had a run with traffic, unexpectedly so. Lagos is what Lagos is, and it remains the center of excellence. I'm going to give a brief, fortunately for me, my job is simple. The guest speaker's profile is very short. I'm surprised why Mrs. Awe made our profile so short, so it made my job easier. Just 3 paragraphs. If we had wanted to spend time on this, we'll have spent the whole day. So it's my honor to introduce Mrs. Tinuade Awe, who until last week was the CEO of NGX Regulation Limited. Tinu Adiawe is a member of the supervisory board of GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, and an independent non-executive director of Lilly Hospitals Limited, where she serves as the chair of the governance committee. Mrs. Awe recently completed her tenure as the first CEO of NGX Regulation Limited, working within the Nigerian Exchange Group, formerly the Nigerian Stock Exchange, for a period of 13 years. She was a board member of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria from 2013 to 2021. For 3 years, she chaired the Corporate Governance Committee of the FRCA, which had board-level responsibility for monitoring the implementation of the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018. Mrs. Awa is a member of FRCA's Adoption Readiness Working Group for the adoption of the International Sustainability Standards Board, IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 in Nigeria. She is also a member of the Advisory Group Market Governance, AGMG, of the World Federation of Exchanges, WFE. Ms. Awa is a lawyer admitted to the Nigerian and New York bars. She's an alumnus of Obafemi Awolowo University, Great Ife. I didn't attend that school in Ife. Harvard Law School and the London School of Economics and Political Science, LSE. She has taken executive and other courses at the Said Business School, University of Oxford, IES in Madrid, IMD Business School, Switzerland, and the Hague Academy of International Law, the Netherlands. I have the singular privilege to invite a woman of means and insight, the immediate past CEO of NGX Regulation, Ms. Tinu Adiawe, to give a 20-minute presentation.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Nigeria happened to me this morning. I do apologize. I think normally a keynote is supposed to set the stage for the meal on the panel. So it's been done the other way around. Okay. It's been done the other way around. But I would like to stand on existing protocols. I would like to thank the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce for giving me the opportunity to talk about this very topical issue of investing in women and thereby accelerating progress. I think I have slides. Okay. Okay, so I think I'll go straight to the introduction. And I'm going to very quickly go through five areas. The first area is investing in women. What do we mean when we say we're investing in women? And how does that relate into accelerating progress? And obviously, one of the reasons why we have International Women's Day and why it's still relevant is because there's a delta between that investment in women and the progress that we're seeing for women on their own or for women as members of society. So like the fourth slide. While that is going on, I'll just keep speaking. So when we talk about investing in women, as I think it was Rolake that mentioned the fact that when she was speaking about sponsorship, that investing in women is not only about financial assets. It's also investing your time, investing your efforts, investing your social capital. I don't know whether some of you watched Koko Onodele giving a tribute at Herbert Wigwe's obsequies, one of the events. And one of the things he talked about was how when he started working in banking, Herbert already had a bank. And Herbert said, you must get involved in trade finance. I don't know anything about trade finance. And then takes him on a journey to the AFDB, introduces him to people there, and keeps insisting, even though Herbert said, I don't know. He caused Herbert to do it afraid. And we need more and more people like that who are investing, sponsoring women. That's, if there ever that was sponsorship, that was a light bulb moment for me as I listened to Coco. So basically, giving opportunities that will help to foster the personal and economic advancement of women. It's also about ensuring that women have financial assets. And when the panel was talking around why there are less women putting themselves in the credit process so that they can get credit. I think part of the problem is that the credit process, some of the things that you need for the credit process are not easily accessible to women. So if, for example, you're talking about real estate and the real estate is in joint names, or in fact, in the case of some women, they've contributed to that real estate, but their names are not on the title. So there's no for the financial institution, even if they understand and they operate in our social milieu, they need show me the books that show that. So, things around poverty alleviation, just trying to do things to make sure that we can deal with the obvious inequalities. And anything where you're basically giving them a financial gain. So it's one thing to have the capital. It's another thing where I have the capital, I have my assets, and I'm doing a business, and somebody else is investing in me. The two sides of capital. Let's go to the fourth page. I have the picture of an aeroplane on the fourth page. And basically, in my mind, when I look at an aeroplane and I look at what this lack of investment in women has done, whether we're talking about social investments of time, investments of finances, investments in education, and all the slew of the types of investments that you could do in women, when we used to do that, our society is operating like an aeroplane that is flying with only one wing. And of course, if we've all been in aeroplanes, and you can look at one of the first things that the pilots will say is, we're traveling at so and so speed, kilometers per hour, and we're at a height of X. So the height matters, the speed matters. In order for that plane to do what Boeing or whichever airplane company created that plane to do. It's the same way that society is made up of men and women. And if you refuse to invest in one, or you don't have the appropriate investments, then your society cannot have the appropriate speed, and it will not have the appropriate height to be able to operate at the level that it should operate. So we need to see the lack of investment in women as not just, women have come again, but that it's actually a societal problem. Next slide. And indeed, if we look at Mama Banda, Joyce Hilda Banda, former president of Malawi, who was the second female president on the African continent, she said something that we all know. She said, when you empower a woman, you empower a nation. So back to that aeroplane flying. I think it was Adesua that talked about women and what they invest in. 90%. Statistic proven, and it's in many societies. They will invest in their children, they will invest in health, they will invest in education. So when you invest in a woman and you empower her to fly at that speed and at that height that she should fly, you are actually affecting the nation. And in Nigeria in particular, it's even more critical, because about 50% of our adult population between the ages of 15 and 64 are women. According to World Bank estimates in 2022. Total population at that time, same for was 117.97. And then when you think around the fact that, and we all see it in our houses, it's the women that actually influence, even if they don't have the purchasing power. They're the ones that are going to influence the type of freezer that you will buy. They're the ones that are going to influence the type of furniture that you will buy. So they actually have, even if they don't have actual purchasing power because they don't have the financial assets within a family, they have influential power. So imagine if you invested in that influential power, the triple effects on society. We're losing a lot by what we're doing, not really focusing on women. Now, if I like to use the example of Fenty Cosmetics, even though I'm not a makeup user, but surprise, surprise, I follow Rihanna. Yeah, because she's a really smart businesswoman. And so in about 2013, she started trademarking her last name, and everybody was like, what's she doing? And then 2018 got into this deal with Louis Vuitton the makers of Louis Vuitton, LVMH. I can't remember what that stands for. It was a French luxury company, and they started Fenty. And Fenty is about women. One of her major selling points was the different shades of foundation, because at that time, and I don't know whether I have a witness in the room, I'm sure I do because you're all women, we all know about the difficulties of getting the exact shade, and then if you're a woman of color, Limited would all be, very happy about MAC and Fashion Fair or whatever. But Fenty came with all sorts. And within 15 months, Fenty had made in sales over half a billion, $590 million US. So that shows you the power of the female economy. But to power that female economy, you need to invest in the woman. You need to invest all of these investments that we've said. Otherwise, you are not powering. And that's just one aspect of the female economy. There's so many other aspects. A lot of us have hair extensions. There's so many other aspects of the female economy that even just our personal care and all of that, before you get into the economy that is shared between us and women, us and the other gender, males. So we really need to accelerate social progress. If we go to the next slide, we should, like 2 slides, the next one. These are, I like this slide because of the 3 women here. Not because, the point I'm making here with these women, you have Malala, this is the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner, very insistent, and this goes back to Sister Deola's point around women taking a cause and sinking their teeth in it. As young as she is, she decided she wanted to go to school. She almost got assassinated, all sorts of things, but she continued in her desire to go to school and is today impacting her society because she has a foundation. She has all this foreign support to help her with the education of women in that society. Rosa Parks, remember Rosa Parks refused to stand up. Societal progress. Women, when they get their teeth in something, they really can make a difference. About women's riot. Again, all the colonial policies that they rioted about, the Abeokuta women's riot is not up there. But these are examples to show that when women decide to move, they will move, and they will move powerfully for society. So society is doing itself a disservice if it continues to put them down. Next slide. So how can we accelerate societal progress? What are some of the areas? The speakers had already spoken about some of them. Financial services. Now we've seen that in the financial services sector, we've seen a lot of progress at the top. But if you dig deeper, you would still see that there are still a lot of women that are coming out of careers in financial services, either because they can't, work-life balance, the elusive balance, which, by the way, I don't believe that there's anything like work-life balance. I think something would always be out of kilter. You can't be at your daughter's recital and be at a board meeting at the same time. So you've just got to learn to live with it, in my own opinion. But what should be done in order to help people to live appropriately with these things? Daycares, you guys know the drill around that. Then in academics, we've also seen the women are doing a lot. If you look at law school results, ICANN results, JAMB results, GCE results, the women are coming. They are here. But what are we doing after they get there? Why is it that with the law school results, if you look at the top 50 law firms in Nigeria, yes, you will see female partners in them, but first of all, they are not the majority, and second of all, a lot of their colleagues who were as good or even better than them dropped out along the way. There's something going on. In the SME and MSME space, women have a lot of nano, the littlest forms of SMEs. Your friend who makes chin-chin, your friend who is a caterer, so many types of businesses that women run that make this society run, but we are not fueling them with the financing that they need to scale up. Thank God for people like Adeswa that are looking at gender lens investing, but we need more people like that can invest in women. Then if you go to digital, one anecdote that I like is the MTN offer, public offer. It was a hybrid offer, both digital and paper. And the digital aspect of it, do you know that 76% of the digital subscribers were women? Yes, 76% of the digital subscribers were women. That tells me something that I know from my inroads into financial inclusion, that digital always works for women because it helps them to outsource some of the societal issues. Nobody knows. So if you, for example, you're within an oppressive socio-cultural family, a family where women are not supposed to own property, for example. You're not telling anybody that, oh, I want to quickly get to the island to see my stockbroker. You're just on your phone, and for all they know, you're following somebody on Instagram. But what you're really doing is, helping yourself to build your financial assets. So digital always works. I don't necessarily think that in doing the digital offer, MTN was trying to target women, but that's an example of something that we can do in offerings. Maybe we need to start looking at how we can offer financial assets across the value chain, pension, insurance, and so on and so forth, to women digitally in order to help them to get over the hump around our cultural issues. And then, of course, investing, the education to invest, first of all, a savings culture. There's a lot that we still need to do around women. This thing that we tell girls that somebody will look after. Nobody is looking after you. That is even too much responsibility on a man, in my own opinion. In this current economic climate, which man wants to pay school fees on his own? Which man wants to, pay house rent on his own? Yes, they can if they have the means, but even the pressure, having to live with somebody that living under that type of pressure, when you are a human being that has a brain, hands and legs, that you can make a contribution as well. Why does society say to you, don't? And then you put all the pressure on this individual, and then you're wondering why he's always upset, always has a headache, is shouting around the house. So we need to rethink some of these things, and we need to raise our boys. I want to ask mothers in this room, raise your boys differently. Raise your boys to expect something from the women that they're in, to want those women to be proud of those women as well. So there's a lot wrong, in my view, about the way we raise females and males in this country, and we need to stop, because we're not getting the full value of women because of some of these sociocultural things. It's ridiculous, in my view. Both of you can be ballers. Both of you can be, high flyers. And we have a lot of couples like that, where both, as they say on the street, they stand well. That is the way it should be, in my opinion. Then, of course, public service. The panel has touched on public service. We have a problem in public service. We got all those bills thrown out, and there wasn't much of an outcry. Clearly, there's also something about the way that we're choosing the women that are coming forward. There are too many examples in the small group of women, too many examples of women that some of us would rather shy away from some of the things that they've been involved in. But we also need to stand and say, men are not required to be representatives. So we will not accept that just because X and Y, were found with several billions in their accounts or all sorts of, that is now the narrative around women. We need to refuse it, So I think, and I have policies on this side, because policy is what can help us in all of these areas: policy, awareness, education, social change. So we've talked about, I just want to really, the delta between that investing in women and the societal progress that we can see with the three examples of those three women, the 2 women and a group of women that I put up. Gender bias and limiting cultural beliefs, I think we've spoken about it. So given that we have limited time, I'm not going to go into that. Access to capital, we've also spoken about it. The panel spoke about it. Lack of opportunity is still a problem. Whether it's opportunities at work, somebody just deciding, oh, she's a married woman, deciding for you, she's a married woman, so I'm not going to sponsor, I'm not going to put her name forward. She just got married. I'm not going to put her name forward for this international internship. No, I can decide. I have agency. And my family has agency to decide whether we will make the sacrifice and have that work balance out of kilter for that period of time. The one thing I also want to say, I like Paul Onwanube spoke at Wimbiz, and there's something he said: sacrifice. It's not going to come easy. So many successful men also make a lot of sacrifices. And we need to realize that to be successful, we will need to make a lot of sacrifices as well. Sometimes I hear women saying, I need to go for something personal, or I need to. We also have to understand that to get to that next level, there's some things that you're going to sacrifice. It's not, nobody was born to give you a tea party. So what are my recommendations? We need to raise awareness and our advocacy efforts, and events like this really help us with that. We need to invest in data and research to inform action. This is a general problem with Nigeria, that we just data and keeping data is not one of our best best points. But we need to have targets and matrices. What does the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce want to do about this? The British Chamber of Commerce did a survey. I don't know whether it was how recent it was, where they were looking at women opting out, out of careers. And based on the survey results, they have certain targeted actions that they're doing in collaboration with companies in Britain. That's something that the Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce too may want to look at. Is there a specific area that is of importance to you, where you want to survey, you want to get the data, and then you will find organizations that I'm sure that are ready to work with you. In my old job at NGX, we worked with the IFC on something called Nigeria to Equal, where we were basically looking at certain listed companies and trying to get the numbers of women in, within the career up to the C-suite up, and what were the issues, and looking at specific things that they needed to do. So it's also something. Then we've got to challenge the biases and the stereotypes. That goes without saying. Corporate collaboration and commitment, that's the kind of thing. Gender lens investing, providing financial incentives, e.g. tax breaks, to companies that actually take gender issues seriously and want to move them forward, where you have the matrices and targets clear. Credit guarantee wraps for women, so that some of those things that women do not have. So if I don't have, title deeds, because, I just don't have title deeds, women don't hold property in my culture, or, my husband was the one that did the transaction for a house we both bought, and his name is on the deed, or the name says Mr. and Mrs. as opposed to, and anybody can be Mrs. You know the drill. There's so many examples. But can we get credit guarantee wraps, and then support for female entrepreneurs? And I think at this point, I will leave. I just wanted to, set a number of things that I feel are the problem. Some of the things that we will enjoy if we address the problem, and obviously some recommendations. And it's goodbye from me. Thank you.
May we have another round of applause for our guest speaker?
Sorry.
Very so apparently we didn't miss anything with the lateness. So before I will invite my panelists to return to their seats. Mrs. Aziz, you are an unpaid plug, and I won't allow you to return to the podium. All right, before the Q&A session starts for 25 minutes, I'd like to play the other sponsors' videos, starting with Aruba Capital, then AXA Mansard. Comms team, please.
My name is Adesua Rhodes. I'm the founder and CEO of Aurora Capital Management. Aurora Capital is an early stage growth equity and gender lens fund investing in West Africa. We've been around now for the last 4 years. We have about $20 million in AUM, and we're focused on investing in businesses that have proven their business model and are looking for access to capital to reach that inflection point and past that inflection point of growth. We're one of the few women-owned and managed funds in the whole of Africa, so we're very excited about investing with a gender lens. And what that means is we invest in businesses that are either founded by women, led by women, or have gender diverse teams, or businesses that are providing an essential good or service that improves women's lives. Being one of the few women-owned and led funds on the continent, we're very intentional about showcasing the immense and untapped potential that African women represent. My background is I've been in the private equity and investment banking industry now for the last 15 years. I started my career in investment banking in Lehman Brothers, JP Morgan, transitioned to private equity in Africa. And during my time at JP Morgan, I was fortunate enough to work on over $6 billion of transactions across consumer sectors, industrial sectors, and really, was able to gain a lot of transaction experience in these sectors that would become very relevant for me in my role in Arua. And it was really during that time at JP Morgan that I got headhunted by a European private equity firm to come and help them build out their Africa business. And I did that for about 4.5 years. And it was really in that journey that I was able to see the significant gap that there is for women on the continent. Both as a woman raising capital, as a capital allocator, there were less than 10 funds in the whole of Africa at the time that were run by women. And then looking down into female entrepreneurs, at the time less than 2% of capital was being raised by female entrepreneurs on the continent. So I saw a very, very clear arbitrage opportunity and a very, very clear gap where as female capital allocators, we can allocate capital to women that are really, unseen and overlooked in the current environment. And by doing so, we now see that there is enormous opportunity and advantages for gender diversity on founding teams, gender diversity in boards, gender diversity in management. So we see it as a very clear arbitrage opportunity to enhance the returns of our fund, but we also see it as a very clear social impact multiplier, just because of the role African women play on the continent. Our impact so far today is something that we're very proud of. Our portfolio of 9 companies is supporting over 96,000 direct and indirect jobs. We're supporting over 700 direct jobs. About 70% of those direct and indirect jobs are women. So we're very, very proud to be able to showcase that our investment strategy can have strong financial return combined with social impact. We're a team of 6 and expanding, based here in Lagos, so that proximity that we have to our entrepreneurs is also something that gives us a very strong competitive advantage with regards to effective sourcing, effective execution, and effective value creation as well. From Fund 1, we're about 75% deployed. We have 2 companies in healthcare, 2 companies in fintech, 1 company in clean tech, and 4 companies in the consumer goods sector. We're very proud to have proven our thesis. We're very proud to have proven that there is demand for our capital. We're very proud to have proven that entrepreneurs want to partner with us. And we look forward to talking to you about our Fund 2 plans, where we look to double down on continuing to back indigenous businesses, continuing to back women, continuing to back the female economy. And we hope that you'll come along with us in this journey. Thank you very much.
Please, I need to see the doctor. Okay. All right, sir.
Mama, papa, brother, sister, Axa Mansard be the answer. Uncle, auntie, family, and friends. Axa Mansard be the answer. Giving more wellness for less, so yeah. So who no go do? Who get your most, yeah.
Enjoy more wellness for less with Axa Mansard.
Now that you have additional funds for the expansion of your business, is it protected?
So, your business is thriving, but is it protected?
I know you've got the best hands running your business, but are they protected? Think about it.
Thank you, Axa Mansard. Moderator, and your pay again, second time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed, and thanks again to our sponsors, Arua Capital and Axa Mansard. So we're going to move to the Q&A segment. Please, if you have a question, do raise your hand, state your name and affiliation, and keep it short and sweet. Thank you. We'll start with Doyi over there. That was the first hand I saw go up.
Great. I'd like to thank all the speakers thus far. My name is Doyin Abiola Tobo. I'm a female founder of a tech-enabled business, doing the Airbnb for warehousing. Basically, we help small and medium-sized companies with their storage and the management of their stock. Check us out at store@arc.com. I have a question because although we realize that now we're trying to move towards a world where we're speaking to people who can fund us and having more female parties who have the power. But generally, as a founder who has raised funding, I have the comments about speaking to a room of men or black screens of just male names. I've experienced that numerous times. Luckily, we've got people to actually back us, but we've also experienced that bias that was spoken about. Until we get to that perfect world, can we have some practical tips about how female founders like myself can conduct ourselves in order to get the audience to hear the mission clearly?
Thank you very much, Doyin, for that question. I think maybe I will throw this, obviously throw it out at Deswa, but I'd also love to hear Mrs. Tinu Adeowe's thoughts on that, practical tips. So maybe we can start with you and then move to Adeswa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. My background is in public markets, which is generally a much later stage, and you've had the family funding, the PE and VC and what have you. But I think the important thing that I always like to emphasize is starting the way you want to be when you are fully formed. And so basic things like ensuring that you have the appropriate governance, ensuring that you have your separation between your personal and corporate accounts. I know that you've gotten some funding already, so I'm sure that is there. Ensuring that you comply with the law. Just basically having a DNA that speaks to where you want to be. I think there are a number of female founders that think, oh, when I get there, I'll do it right. No, start doing it right. Your bookkeeping, your separating, yourself from the business, ensuring that you have employees and employment contracts, properly dimensioning your risks. I think for founders now, there's also the ESG perspective. There's certainly a number of investors that are investing with an ESG lens. So if there is, for example, with you, Ms. Thomas, I don't know whether there are in the storage facilities, there's certain things like, for example, lighting that doesn't use as much energy, social issues like where you source from, whether, the type of labor, all of those types of things can be part of your story. And I think keeping the data on them, because what the bigger companies are finding now is not that they don't have any ESG reportable information, but that the data is all over the company and they don't know how to get it in order to speak. So I think one of the things about a company that's just coming up and realizing that there's this amount of funding that is chasing folks that are running their businesses in a sustainable way is you can align yourself to that and ensure that you have the data already. And I think that would be a differentiator. Thank you.
Thank you. Adeso, I'd like you to answer that question, but perhaps the other thing I'd like you to throw in when you answer is when a female founder is actually pitching in the moment, when you're in that room and there's 4 or 5 men or however many seated, what are some of the practical tips and strategies as well? Thank you.
Sure. So I always say to female founders that surprise, when you see men in the room, 5 men in the room, surprise them with how well you're able to articulate your numbers. I think that's something that we as women sometimes struggle with. Or we say, oh no, my finance person has that. No, don't do that. So being very, very clear and crisp on your unit economics. So you run a warehouse business. I would want to know exactly the exact unit economics of one warehouse and how you intend to scale that up. So being very, very clear and crisp on your numbers, I think is a tip that I always give to female founders. Your margins, top line growth, unit economics. If a man was in that room, that's something that he'll be able to say very, very clearly. And sometimes I think we struggle as women to do that. So be very, very clear on that. Be very, very clear when you're pitching on your vision. So I think if I take you back to what I said earlier, they would probably be asking you preventative questions. How are you mitigating risk? Try and answer that briefly. Go back to the vision and go back to selling how you're going to be the next, what's the biggest warehousing chain? I don't know. But how you're going to be the next big, the biggest warehousing chain in Africa in the next 2 years if you're able to just get that funding. So being very, very clear on your vision, being very, very clear on your achievements to date and your traction. I think we struggle to brag sometimes in these pitches. I always encourage our female founders to brag. brag, because a man in that room, sorry men, but they haven't done anything, and they would be talking like as if they've done everything. So please brag, please know your numbers, and don't spend too much time talking about the risk mitigation, because they'll try and put you in that hole if you're not careful. So those would be my tips.
Okay, thank you very much for 2 very useful perspectives. I'm tempted to almost ask Mr. Adekoya to give you a rejoinder to those statements, but I'll spare you now, except you have something to contribute to. Yeah, okay.
Profit and dividends don't have agenda. If you get into the room, be it a male-led business or a female-led business, as Adeso has said, you have to know what you're talking about. You must convince me that you know what you're going to do. You know the now, you know the immediate tomorrow and the future. If you're unable to convince me, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, you won't get the funding. Yes, Adeso is correct. As you state your vision, the bolder it gets, we will get wary. and then the risk type questions come. Answer them. It's still the confidence with which you respond to these questions that gives the comfort. But the bottom line is, am I going to make money if I invest? As long as you are able to clear that doubt that I may have, you more than likely get the investments you're looking for.
Okay, thank you very much. More questions, please. Yes, there's a lady in green there.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Professor Yabode Oguniro. I lecture at the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. I'm also a director in Eximia, which by virtue I'm here. I like what I've been listening to, and thank you, Ms. Adesua, for Arua Capital Investment. I'm just wondering that if you look at the statistics, you have so many women, rural women, women at the low ladder of what we're talking about. So I've just been wondering that how can we capture them? How do we invest in them, going back or going forward? Thank you very much. That population, and they are a lot in Nigeria. Women in the rural areas, poor women, how do we capture them? Do they even know what we are talking about when you're talking about investment or investing in women? So what do we do? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that's a brilliant question. What we're going to do actually is take maybe a couple more questions, and then so maybe Adesua, you can just have that in mind, and we take 2 more questions for the panel. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Ama. I am the co-founder and chair of Africa Sustainable Trade. We are focused on changing the African narrative, but including increasing trade intercontinentally and for export. I actually have a comment and a call to action. Is this on again? Thank you. So I've got a comment, but I've also got a call to action. And it probably dovetails on much of what we have alluded to today, and of course the question that came up earlier. One of the things that we need to do to invest in women and accelerate is really to change the narrative. We start as women being deficient, and we're not deficient. We're powered. We are powered. We're born with the same abilities as men or boys, girls. And it has become necessary for us, as we speak to people across Africa, we're recognizing that for women, it comes down to access to education at a very young age. So access to education, access to skills, access to the opportunities for financing, for them to scale their businesses and continue to be export ready. But here's the thing that's interesting, access to work. Very often, we find that the data reflects that less than 8% of women actually go to university on this continent. So if we go back to an earlier comment that Niyi made about the talent, we have to build the talent from the early ages into university so that we now have a rich talent pool for the businesses that we're speaking of. And then we have to support these women through mentorship and, of course, sponsorship. But I want to emphasize something that's come to mind as I sit here today and I look at one male on the board. Male allyship. It is very critical. The more we have males, and there's so few in this room today, the more we have males understanding why the narrative must change for women, the quicker we're going to reach equity and equality for women in work and in society. I'm going to just for 1 minute highlight something that Niyi, hopefully you will forgive me for saying this, but I have to say this. He's a very humble man, but I know him very well. He speaks wonderfully and lovingly about his mother, the late Auntie Inga. my mother as well in so many ways, because she's my godmother. And it's because of her that I am the woman I am today. And she was the first and only female surveyor general of Nigeria in 1994. Why are there no other female surveyor generals? The answer is very simple. We don't promote STEM. We sort of deviate women from the fields where they can have the greatest influence: technology, engineering. We're very good with the medicine and teaching and all of those, but we need to emphasize that. Himself and his family fund a scholarship program through our NGO, Live Abundantly, and it's specifically for female students in surveying. We've just graduated 3 of those women, and I believe the next woman, I didn't say female, woman surveyor general is amongst those women that we've graduated. And so my call to action, and Ray, forgive me for highlighting, but in December, when Ray was inaugurated, I said inaugurated, your convocation, you understood, thank you. Inaugurated indeed. He spoke about the Youth and Women Empowerment Center. And we really need to put the effort and time into this. And so I'm asking the women, invest in those people, because the youth are the future. The youth are the people that we should be speaking to. I know how old I am, and I think some of you do. I'm getting closer to the time when I will start to not be as visible. But I will always be visible because I know I have a voice and my voice is important. But I want to bring the youth along. We have to bring the youth along. They're entrepreneurs, they're creative, and they're looking for financing. And this is the time for us to do that. That investing in women and accelerating, we have to do it starting with the youth, and it starts with education. Every single person is powered, and if you don't have a seat at the table, please bring your bench. It's much wider, and they will notice you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's take 2 more questions. Let's get as many questions in because we're running out of time.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Batayo Amzad. I run Zenfix Limited. I'm also in the fast-moving consumer goods space, primarily in the groundnut value chain because I produce confectionaries made from peanuts. So our latest efforts are trying to provide import substitution because it will amaze us that people in this country still import groundnuts because of some standards that local peanuts are not able to meet. So we're trying to do something in that space as well. So after Prof asked her question today, I'm a great akokite as well, by the way, I became unsettled in my spirit. And why is that so? Is because I know when I started my journey, I had to patronize a lot of SMEs at the smaller scale. I mean, my first products had eggs. And I had an egg vendor who started supplying me 2 crates. From 2 crates became 100 crates. And then at some point, I could no longer scale with fresh eggs. I had to start producing with egg powder. And that was chaotic because it was a very tough one to even break the news to her. And like, where will I start from? My build capability, we just had to move on and to do other things. So because I became unsettled, then I'm thinking, okay, yes, we need to grow with the smaller businesses, patronize the local vendors, people in the rural areas, aggregate, and at some point we just have to move. And I'm thinking, how much is your involvement in the activities, of the women-led businesses that you also fund? I mean, is there a way to just ensure that, they keep giving back or carrying the SMEs along, or just making sure that they improve them, train them, so that they also grow and scale? Or you have to target the smaller SMEs separately, maybe have some form of inclusive program for them as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I've noted that, Ms. Hamzat. One more question, and then we'll go to a round of answers.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Sholakwe Akipelu, and I'm CEO Harvest. Harvest is giving greater access to women, particularly in financially excluded and underserved communities. Back to Professor's question then, such women. And so what we do, we give them access to credit, savings, and impact investment, actually. And my question particularly too, well, just to wrap up quickly. The first is about financial readiness. And I know that this is one thing that, funders, ecosystem players take their time to prepare us female founders for. And I must say, truly that a lot of us really get quite afraid quickly, especially when the numbers and then what you expected to achieve in growth. And recently, we launched another product because largely our credit had been for particularly smallholder female farmers. But operationally, we're seeing challenges with that. And so we extended that to female-led SMEs to say, you know what, come get affordable loans and then we'll also support you alongside. And we realized a struggle. A lot of these women do not want to take credit. And the majority of them stepping forward are taking it on behalf of their spouses. And, that because the way we think about this is a chain, right? So to expand, we need external capital. We take debt, convertibles, and different, instruments. So my question from that insight is, and this could be, best suited for you, Adesua, do you struggle with finding the best, or fundable female founders? Because literally we are having a call for applications and then we're struggling to get enough, even when we've been able to, raise some debts to allocate and match them to capital.
Thank you.
Does the same replicate when you are, allocating to founders? And then the other one, quickly, yes, it's just about, quota and how it affects tokenism. I'll just throw that out because I see a struggle there to say, okay, quota, and then it's a perfunctory act. So let's put a woman there.
Thank you.
I'd love for the panelists to speak to that.
Thank you, Shalakwe. Okay, so we're going to take one more. Sorry, I'm just taking liberties because I know we're running out of time. So I want us to get in just one more, and that's it. Sorry, for the rest of the day, so we can get the responses in.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nove Emeralo. I'm the MD of UTIB Insurance Brokers. So we're intermediaries between the insuring public and the insurance company. I think I would like to talk to Mrs. Adiola, if I'm right. Okay, we've talked about increasing our quota, women quota, women have to do this. I just want us to go back to, is there anything like women in politics? In terms of what has just happened, I don't want us to just brush it aside. What do we do in ensuring that this kind of embarrassing situation does not arise? Such as we've lobbied, we've gone through thick and thin to ensure that the women quota is increased in all the sectors. And you get there and you really begin to misbehave. How do we begin to educate women to ensure that they don't do this kind of thing? And men will look at it and say, see, they're asking for quota. They can't even behave. Thank you.
Thank you, but men misbehave all the time. So,
but you see, we don't have
but I think your point is taken. It's what I said about the burden of representation. So the way we can take this, so the first question was really around the bottom, women at the bottom of the pyramid that Prof asked and what we can do about them. The second question was around, well, it was more a contribution from Dr. Ama, I believe, or Professor Ama. I'm not sure. And she mentioned the issue of STEM subjects, male allyship. I think those are really important points, and I'd also like to hear from Ms. Adekoya on that. There was an issue that Ms. Hamzat mentioned around the capacity of these micro businesses and the capacity to scale and what sort of support we can give to them. And I think maybe, Mrs. Awe, you can take some of that as well as the issue around tokenism versus quotas. There was a question around financial readiness, finding fundable female companies, and of course the final question around women in politics. Maybe we might call Mrs. Aziz to comment on that finally. So I will start with Adesua. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it touches, my response is going to touch on the professor's question as well as the lady's question with regards to empowering SMEs in the value chain. So we are very intentional about how we invest. We don't just want to invest in just the founder or a business just because it's a female founder. We look at what is the value chain of the business. So I can give some examples. We invested in a business that provides solar freezers to market women. So market women in Balogun, in Anakbaja, that are selling frozen meat, frozen fish, they don't have access to power. Even with this diesel, I think someone said diesel at 1700, right? So with our solution, the company that we invested in, they can have access to power for up to 4 days as long as they have sunlight without access to the grid. We have about 3,000 women that are using our product on a daily basis. So that's one example. Another example, we invested in a business that provides FMCG products on a fulfillment to kiosks across Nigeria. So women that are selling Milo, selling oil, etc., we make sure we deliver to them on a daily basis so that they don't have to leave their store, which takes time, and they're able to grow their business, grow their profitability. We also provide them with technology that enables them to monitor their inventory and monitor profitability. That company has 65,000 retailers on its network. 55,000 of them are women. That's another example. We have a business that locally manufactures baby diapers, adult diapers, sanitary pads. Most of its distributors are women. So we are very intentional that as we invest in the businesses that we back, the value chain that we're investing in is empowering the women that you speak about. We also provide grant capital to some of our businesses. So like the business I spoke about that provides its solar freezers, there is a credit element to allow the women lease to own those products. We provided grant capital to the business so that those women have financial literacy. What's the amount of the loan that I should be taking? When do I know when it's time to buy the second one? So we are very intentional to make sure, because the women that you speak about are the backbone of our economy. So we need to make sure that, yes, we're investing big money in the company that gets the headline, but in the value chain, how are we empowering those women? Because they're the ones that are providing the access to goods and services for the children, the healthcare that we spoke about, the job creation. It all comes down from those grassroots. So I hope that answers your question. The women that, yes, we're very hands-on and intentional about that.
There's a question around finding fundable female founders.
Yes. So by the grand scheme of things, we're quite small, Sholak there. So we only need to invest in 10 to 12 businesses per fund. And we managed to find 7 out of 10 businesses in our first fund that are female-led businesses. So when we say female-led, it could be female-led, female co-founded or founded, or a business that's led by a very gender-diverse senior management team. So we haven't found any issues in finding these businesses that are willing to take on equity capital. So our business, our capital is equity capital. We're not providing debt, we're not providing loans. So we've been able to find businesses that are ready to kind of pass that inflection point of growth, that are female-led and female-focused.
Okay, thank you very much, Adesua. Yes, please, clap for her. Then I'd like Mr. Adekoya to make some comments on male allyship. And I think, Mrs. Awe, I'd also like to hear your perspective on male allyship, Mr. Adekoya, and also encouraging STEM subjects for women from a very young age.
How do I start? It's essential, male allyship. How do women get these males into the room and to hear the discussions? I think, as Dr. Amma has mentioned, that women undersell their power, their influence, and their reach, especially in Africa, give an example. We have 36 states. That means we have 36 first ladies. We have a president who has a wife. We have a Senate president who has a wife. I don't hear any of them saying anything about gender diversity, gender equity. But they all spend the night with their husbands. And there are people in this room who have relationships with these women and that can say to them, why aren't you speaking to your husband on these issues? The more you talk to men, the more you'll get us to buy into what you're talking about. Yes, in our subconscious, there might be issues around what does she mean? Does that mean she's not going to be at home? Is she expecting me to do this? But we will get past that easily. We're not as thick as women think we are. As I mentioned earlier, you sell your argument properly, 95% of us come around. And I've always said to women that especially ones who are married, they know exactly what buttons to press when they want to get what they want. So press those buttons, talk to us. There are lots of corporate entities that are male-run who are looking for ways to invest in female-run businesses, students in the STEM area especially that are female. Because from a selfish standpoint, we understand that you bring a female into your business, there's a higher likelihood that she will be loyal. You can invest in her and she will stay and she will grow. Less likely that she will steal your money. You would be a lot more comfortable with her representing you. And the funny thing is that we men are a lot more emotional when it comes to money than women are. So I think there's a strong play, but it has to be driven by the women. When people tend to recoil, they start to question your motives on both sides of the divide. So I'll put it back to the women and say, if you want that male allyship, it has to be led by you. And you have to have that strong and convincing argument to get us to sit down and to actually lend our voices. Fantastic WIMBIZ actually has a male person as a member of the founding 13. There used to be, Rotary used to be a completely male-dominated club. It's now gender diverse. So it's happening. But it has to be, we have to see that this is important to the women. If we are the ones that are driving it, we will dictate the agenda. And the agenda is not likely to be what the women would want. So it has to be driven by the women.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. A round of applause for him. Mrs. Awe, I'd like you to maybe respond to the question of how quotas can often be seen as tokenism. I think I would also like you to speak on male allyship, but also female allyship, because I think that was an important point that was raised earlier around women who rise to the top and then become content there. So how can we women as well do a lot more to collaborate to ensure we achieve our goals? And then I'd like to throw in a question for you around your keynote presentation. You know, you talked about the various initiatives that had been taken in the capital markets and the various studies that had been done. And I'd like to find out whether you encountered any resistance, cultural resistance, maybe from the corporate world, around some of the initiatives you were taking in terms of trying to look at metrics around diversity and inclusion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So first on the allyship question, I think spot on. I think women we're not in competition with men. It's about two genders, again, the aeroplane example, making society better. And unfortunately, we've had the raw end of the stick from a socio-cultural perspective. But I think that we're dealing, first of all, we're the hand that rocks the cradle. So I always say, women, raise your children, both male and female, to understand that the world has two genders and they both have something to contribute. I think that is not something that we're very deliberate about. and being deliberate about the way we raise our sons in particular, and resisting certain stereotypes. As a mother, there's a lot of, just as he was saying about wives, there's a lot of power that you have in a household to dictate the how much the socioeconomic structure will come into your household. And women are custodians of culture anyway, so it's something that we should pay attention to. I think we need men. I have been very blessed in my life to have male sponsors, male allies that have really, indeed, I think every time that I feel that my career took a step up, it was a male friend or a male sponsor that was responsible. And that's not because I don't have females, so I don't want to give the impression that females have not been helpful to me, but I'm just acknowledging that there are men who don't see the gender. They just see competence and they want the competence. And we should applaud such men. We should work with them. We should find them, and we should always include them.
Recording in progress.
I think it was Dr. Amada was talking about the demographics of this room. A lot of IWD days, we have just women. We should be conscious about having men participate and come and not just be the token as well. So it's a woman's thing, so I think that that's important. I think with respect to the allyship, the other thing I want to say is because power is still largely in the hands of men, whether it's corporate leadership, political leadership, that's another reason why, if you want to share power, you do need to have conversations with those in power. So, a lot of the CEOs of listed companies are males. So if you want listed companies, for example, in our example, to do something, have programs for women, deal, the Nigeria to Equal, the women empowerment principles, you need to ally with men. There's just no way around it. I think on the point around quotas, I don't have a problem with quotas. In fact, I get very upset when very senior women, sometimes in the most inopportune places, say, I don't like quotas, I got here on my own and everything. Even if you don't like quotas and you got there on your own, can you have the conversation outside the room of all these power brokers? Can we have the conversation? And, because there's yes, on the one hand, I was talking about how we don't want the burden of representation, but whether we want it or not, you have the burden of representation. So I also think that with women, we need to be smart around where we're disagreeing. There's a certain level of responsibility when you're a woman in a senior position, even if you don't exactly agree with something that is being shown. But when you say it in a room full of power brokers, you kill it even before you fully understand it. And we don't understand the power that we have, and I see this a lot, and I think a lot of us are getting onto boards now. I think people need to, it's something as simple as what's your hiring like? Are you ensuring that you have 50-50 applying for job? Something you can start from the non-threatening to the threatening, because if somebody is in a position of power, and every time you bring up things that look like you want to displace them, then that's a problem. And so I think just the ability to walk the quota when you get in, as Adesua said, the quota is one thing. Now, what do you do with the quota? Don't become a peacock. And I think, I'm the only one, I have my plumes, and I'm the only woman on this board. I don't think that there's any kudos for being the only woman on a board. Why is that a thing of pride for a long period of time? We need to lose things like that. And I think the way to do it is to work with others, as Sister D was saying when she was speaking. Work with Wimbies, work with Gaia, work with Whisker, whoever. There are a number of organizations now that have programs, so you don't even have to reinvent the wheel if you're in a position of responsibility. If you're on the board of a big multinational, and you go to Wimbies and you say, I don't know what to do, I can assure you Wimbies will find what you should do. They will give you that. And I think the millennials and the Gen Zs, I'm a bit quiet on, I'm not as active as I should be on LinkedIn, but one thing I do is I follow people. So for example, Sholakbe, I'm one of your followers. And I read, and you see sometimes the Gen Zs will say, oh, I'm launching a legacy project. And I'm like, you're a Gen Z, but you're launching a legacy project. But but what I'm saying is, if you've gotten to a certain age, those Gen Zs, they're very confident. But some of us that have been in the corporate world or in working 30, 40 years, we still. So another thing that we can take out of this IWD, please, your legacy project, whether it's going back to your alma mater and finding a prize for girls, or doing something, working in collaboration with people, so that quota, that when you get onto that board or you get onto that, you are the one of two women. The last thing I want to talk about, and Raquel, please, this is why you shouldn't give me a microphone, is the scarcity mentality. The fact that sometimes with women we think there's only one seat or there are only two seats. So and we don't like to talk about this, but it's there. It's not. I don't like to blame the women that display the scarcity mentality, because it's the way we're programmed. There are only going to be two women on that board. There are only going to be two women in that C-suite. We need a change of mind, and as we build legacy projects, each one of us having a legacy and pulling back, I think we will start letting go of some of that scarcity as we engage with folks. I think that's it. The last one was, did we experience? No, we didn't experience, because it was by choice. So we had the women's empowerment principles. Do you want to sign on to them? Folks signed on to them. Do you want to be in Nigeria to equal? We reached out to listed companies, and the ones that wanted to do it did. And we had, we have MTN, we had Cadbury, quite a number of companies that signed on. One thing that I would have liked to see is more of the indigenous companies. Because sometimes when the multinationals sign on to some of these things, you're wondering whether it's also driven by the fact that headquarters, which is subject to a different socioeconomic and sociocultural milieu, is also driving down. But we start from somewhere. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to come to Mrs. Aziz for the last question. But before that, I wanted to share a little, just very short snippet on a conversation I recently had with my 5-year-old son, where we were looking at colors, and he suddenly said to me, yeah, but blue is for boys and pink is for girls. And, as a women's empowerment champion, just deep in my soul, I was like, who told you that? Why does it have to be that way? And in my head, I was thinking, is his young mind too young to understand what I'm trying to get at? But also giving the way many of our children are exposed to Western culture, I also needed to balance that, because I didn't then want to push him to the other extreme, because I then don't know what the potential consequences of that. But I had the issue of gender equality and diversity. Thank you very much, Mrs. Aziz. Please, over to you. The question from the lady who runs an insurance brokerage firm on women in politics. Yes,
Mrs. Megalu, right? I'll just stand because I'm not sure everybody can see me in this corner. What I'd like to say is a very valid question. And what is missing from women in governance is what we have in the corporate private sector, where you'd have in transparency, the 3 C's, character, competency, and capacity. In some cases, courage. Now, there are groups, Wimbies being one of them, because we lead these places where there are gaps. We have a women in politics group, right? Committee. And we have members who are interested to join it. I started it in Wimbies. I led it. Now, We also have Women in Politics Forum. That is more of women who have actually tried to go into politics, and it was the chairman of that is Mrs. Ebere Ifendu. She's in Abuja. Now, for the kind of women, and I'm trying to be very careful about how I choose my words here, who have gone into governance, and for want of a better word, they have not represented us very well. It all starts from the choice of women from the political parties. Yes. Okay? Now, if the women who put themselves forward are from the political parties, and the political leadership decides that it is from the women who are within the party, who haven't been well groomed, they don't have the 3 C's, right? And the right kind of decorum, the way they speak, have they done their research, they're bound to set themselves up for failure. And the way the public looks at them is they feel all women in Nigeria are like them. Hell no. And you know that. That is why I put myself forward from the corporate sector, having imbibed the discipline, the accountability, the transparency, the research, the diversity, the inclusion, everything that is necessary, the ingredients that are necessary to make the private sector political thrive and succeed. Now, if you have on the other side women in that sector who haven't gotten all these ingredients that will make themselves project themselves well, and when the opportunity comes, they're ready. I'm sure all of you in this room, if I become the first female president or the first female governor or the senator, won't you vote for me? Won't you trust me? You will trust me because you know I won't steal your money. I've already acquired and done what I need to do before I'm going into governance. So I'm going there to serve. And when they say serve, you know, they've all abused that word service. For me, service is love of people. If you're not connected to people, if you're not people-oriented, if you're not a listening ear, you cannot do the role. And women in politics is tough. As you know, women in the private sector juggling and doing it. And of course, the first thing, don't let's kid ourselves. If you do not marry or have the right kind of spouse, forget it. Okay? And then on the other side, you know what it is, how we are looked at. When you're a woman, they're looking for your husband. Is he there? Did he sponsor you? Did he support you? When I went into that foray, for my first a couple of encounters, beg, steal or borrow, hobby beside me. Do you understand what I'm saying? He was there supporting me. So if those, and then of course most of them, I don't want to mention names, if you do a deep dive into the women who are in the, they were just appointed by their, do you understand what I'm saying? Without even looking at the character, do they have the competency? Can they defend? Can they articulate themselves? Unfortunately, it is a sad case. So for those of you who have sisters, nieces, younger ones, you know, if you've done with private public sector and you know you're represented well in the private sector, please go into politics. If you don't go, it won't change. It is a fact. If you don't go, it won't change. If you want to know if you've been or you're an entrepreneur, start and go to schools. Mentor, look at women who've done it right. I was trying to rack my brain. Which female elective politician, not appointed, right, in Nigeria, can I say I want to look forward to who did it right? I mean, it was a struggle for me to actually think. Oh, sorry. Not appointed. I'm talking of elected. Who went through? Who comes to mind readily? I have one or two in mind, but I know if I mention their name, you say, they did this or that. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's the hard fact. You don't give what you don't have. You can't give what you don't have. So again, join Wimbase. Even Wimbase, we're still struggling to make sure that the women in politics and all of that. I'm doing all, that's all I'm all about. I call myself a corporate politician, a woman in politics who diversified or who segued from public-private sector, knowing the skills that was needed in that sector before you segue into the public sector.
Thank you.
So again, I can't say better.
Thank you, Mrs. Aziz. Very, very well said. Very inspiring. Thank you so much for offering your perspectives today. It's been such a rich and engaging conversation, a very open and frank conversation, I must add. I hope NBCC is happy with the outcome and the level of candor that we've had here. So I'd like to thank Adeso Okumbo Rhodes of Ariwa Capital Management for her contributions. And it seems like you may have some potential investee companies in the audience. I've already identified 2. There may be more. I'd also like to thank Mr. Adini Adekoya of Prime Atlantic for his perspective. Really, really happy and thrilled to have that perspective. And thank you for putting your heart on the table, literally. And of course, our keynote speaker, the great Amazon, this is Tinuade Awe. Thank you for the keynote, for offering those perspectives from capital markets. I think I've been richly inspired by all your contributions. It makes me want to do more and be more. And hopefully you all enjoyed the conversation here today. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
May we give a thunderous ovation to our guest speaker, the panelists, and the moderator as they have their seats. Let's do them another round of honors, please. So before we move on, the last video harvest, one of our sponsors will have their videos as short as possible. And also to thank Ms. Diola Aziz, one of us. Harvest.
Thank you. She's smiling. Can I? It's no secret that women entrepreneurs face a huge challenge in accessing the required capital to scale or even to start their businesses. You know the struggle. You have the hustle. You've got a big vision. There's fire in your belly. But without the required capital, you can't move nowhere like a car out of gas. And that's why today I'm happy to introduce to you the new Harvest Loan solution for you, for women entrepreneurs. Harvest Loan is live! How did we start? It all started in September 2023 when we set out to build a better loan experience for women. The months that followed were a thrilling roller coaster. Brainstorming sessions, buzzing with ideas, late night spent refining the process, a few more tweaks and tweaks and tweaks. Eventually the tweaks ended. Or maybe not. Harvest Loan is not just a quick pit stop for cash. It's a customized roadmap for you with flexible repayment plans and a dedicated support team towards your success. So how exactly does this magic happen? I'll call my colleague now, Cheta, to tell you much more about it. Cheta,
Sure
are you
thing.
ready?
Yeah. With just a few clicks, you have access to funding that is ready to help you fulfill your goals. Simply log on to loan.harvest.ng, select either a personal or business loan, enter your first and last name, your mobile number, and other required information. We have built it sleek and friendly that you can navigate it blindfolded.
Thank you, Cheta.
Well,
we are making finance fun, accessible, and oh so empowering. Harvest Loan isn't just about funding your business. It's about funding your dreams, your potentials, your purposes, and your possibilities, one click at a time. To start, visit our website at loan.harvest.ng. Let Harvest be your partner in unlocking possibilities. Thank you.
Voss, member of ESCO, chairman of the tech group. I didn't know she has director skills for Nollywood. You know. So Shalape, maybe you might want to diversify from women-focused financing to directing in Nollywood. Okay, before I invite Mr. President, Chairman of Council to come appreciate our guest, I have a few announcements to make. So we have a training room on the right side as soon as we exit this building. One of our sponsors, MedPlus, are giving us these free services: blood sugar checkup, blood pressure, BMI checkup for free. It's just on the right side. Then the optional services for which you are going to pay, we must have them. Test for hepatitis B, typhoid vaccine, vaccine for cervical cancer, and flu vaccine. So the ones that want to do the free ones, there's an opportunity to do it. The ones that require payment, I'm certain that MedPlus is not going to charge us an arm and a leg for these services that are being paid for. Also, sponsors AXA Mansard and Lotus Bank, they're in the same training room, so you can engage them for your services, insurance business, and Lotus Bank for non-interest banking, as it is. May I have the honor to invite President Chairman of Council, Mr. Ray Attile, FRPA, to give honor to whom honor is due, first with our guest speaker, Mrs. Tino Adiawe. A round of applause for Mr. President and a guest speaker.
Recording in progress.
Mr. President.
We are very delighted to have you here. I know time is spent, so we'll be very short. Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to having you again next time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, still wait. Next is Mrs. Adesua Okubo Rhodes, a panelist and also a sponsor. We give her a round of applause too.
Again, thank you.
And finally, the blessed man amongst women, Mr. Adeni Yadekoya. Mr. President, please wait behind. Speakers, Mrs. Awe, Mrs. Rhodes, Mr. Adekoya, could you come and join council members, Ms. Anai, and ESCO members also, to join them for 40 hops. ESCO members. As ESCO members take their seats, Mr. President and only our guests, that's the speakers and the panelists, with Mr. President alone. Oh, that's true. She was a co-opted panelist. Oh, I like that. Can we give her a round of applause? You know, when you're too familiar with someone, you're also Mrs. Aziz, you know, so pardon me. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, you may have your seat. Thank you so much, sir. I've been a member of ESCO for a few years, and I've also anchored IWD for a few years. I would like to say with all emphasis at my disposal that this is the most insightful and engaging IWD we've ever had at the chamber. May we give another resounding round of applause to our panelists and the guest speaker for this. So my job is done, and I wasn't paid for. A member of ESCO of the chamber. It's my honor to invite the Vice Chairman of the Programs Committee, which I chair, Mrs. Adenike Ibirogba, to give the vote of thanks. Mrs. Ibirogba, may we give her a round of applause, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sure you have all had a very inspiring day. I don't think we are all going to leave here today not knowing that it has been one of the most exciting IW Day we've had at the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, I would like to thank Mrs. Rolake Akinkugbe-Filani. Thank you so much, though I see that she's up. I have to also thank the panelists, our Honorable Mr. Adeni Yadekoya. Thank you so much. Mrs. Adesua Okombo Rhodes. And I think we should also still thank Mrs. Kemi Awoden because she was at the session we had yesterday, but for reasons beyond our control, she couldn't make it here. I'd also like to thank the patrons and council members, our sponsors, Lotus Bank, Aruwa Capital Management, Asad Mansad, Harvest, and MedPlus. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being at this function today. The Programs Committee has done a lot of work to put this together. Thank you to all members of the Programs Committee. And to the NBCC headquarters, thank you so much for always doing your best. Please note the upcoming events for the Chamber. The NBCC Business Advocacy Roundtable is scheduled to hold on the 12th of March 2024. The theme is reimagining potential opportunities for a trade and investment in Nigeria today. Another upcoming event is the NBCC Members Evening Induction Ceremony, which will hold on the 21st of March 2024, where new members are welcome. We also have the Green Fund. A Going Green project is scheduled to hold on March 28, 2024, and the theme is the environment, where we were, where we are, and where we are going. Please note that this plaza is open with the state-of-the-art facilities for you to explore your corporate events, training, seminars, and meetings at a very, very affordable rate. You can reach out to the Chamber's headquarters to make inquiries and reservations. We would love to have your feedback. Please scan the barcode on the screen, if the screen is still there, to fill out our feedback form. Please follow us on all the social media platforms to be informed of all our activities. Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye.
Sorry, we have a media interview for Mr. President, Mr. Adekoya, Mrs. Aziz, and Mrs. Awe with TVC Communications. So, AXA Mansard, Lotus Bank, and MedPlus on the right of the room. Thank you and enjoy the remainder of the day. It's been a wonderful 3 hours spent. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Recording stopped.